let's start. The first thing I want to mention is because I know the project, since the course is self-paced and everyone is at a different pace, and I also have some new people joining. So I have the idea to start the class by reminding you guys how the program is structured and what you guys should be doing to work on the project from beginning to end. I guarantee you guys that if you can follow these steps, you will definitely see an improvement in your skills and your knowledge, which will allow you to do better during your interview, which leads to a job. So everything is a process. You just have to be disciplined to follow the process. Just to remind you guys again, for those that are going through the projects and those that are new, once you are in your account, in your library, you will see all these projects here that are arranged in this order. What you should do is start with the first project and go through it. The first project is informational. There's information in this project about how to start with the AWS Cloud Practitioner and Solutions Architect course. And we have a mini project at the end. Then once you have complete that, then you pretty much move on to the next project. The next project is hosting a static website. When I was learning about cloud computing, this was the very first project I did that pretty much kickstart everything for me. So that is why I've included this project here as a foundational project for you guys to take. I want you guys to take this project as serious as you would take any other project, because if you understand what you are doing in this project, you pretty much understand about 60 to 70% of all the other things you would do, because the next projects we are going to work on is pretty much building on the knowledge you gain from this project. And so once you start the first project, which is this deploy static website, well, when you guys are taking the course, there is a mini project in here. So once you complete the project in here, in the getting started, that is just hosting an HTML website on an EC2 instance. Once you complete that project, for every project you complete in this program, for example, there is a project in this first course just to host an HTML website on an EC2 instance. Once you complete that project for those in this program, what you have to do is there is a corresponding assignment for that project. To test your knowledge, you can complete the assignment, and to find the assignment, all you have to do is you come to our Slack channel in the AWS DevOps channel. Then you click on this icon up here. Then once you click on that icon, scroll down here and you can see assignment 1. So assignment 1 corresponds with the very first project you would do in the Get Started with AWS course. There is a mini project at the end. So I'm calling that project 1. So once you complete that project, do assignment 1 to test your knowledge, to see what you understand and what you need to focus on. When you start working on your assignment, part of what I'm teaching you guys is what the day-to-day is like for a cloud engineer. When you work on tasks at work, usually we enter those tasks in Jira. So that is why we have a Jira board here where you get in a habit of creating your tickets for the assignment you are working on. Then you also get in the habit of, once you create your ticket, moving your ticket to in progress, in review, because these are the things you'll be doing on a day-to-day as a cloud engineer. These assignments are meant for you to pretend as if you are working as a cloud engineer. So I don't want you guys to see this assignment as your projects you are working on. In the course, on the website, these are the projects you are working on. But when you are working on these assignments, I want you to take them serious. Pretend as if this is a Jira task you are working on at work. And when you are completing them, you need to focus on things like making sure your VPC, anything that is asked of you to complete as the acceptance criteria for the assignment, you have to complete them properly. Use the right naming convention for your resources. Don't just randomly create stuff and just trying to get to the end. Use the right naming convention and provide what is required for the acceptance criteria. The assignments here are meant for you to pretend as if you are working, because what you develop as an habit now is what you will be doing when you start working. So that's what the assignments are meant for, just to kind of get you ready. So once you complete project 1, there will be assignment 1. And when you complete project 2, so once you complete assignment 1 for project 1, on the Jira board, move it, provide So when you are completing the assignment on the Jira board, you will create your ticket. Then once you start working on the assignment, you can drag your ticket. This is just a drag. You can drag your ticket to in review. And once it's in review, when you have completed the assignment, click on it and provide your acceptance criteria. As you can see, when I clicked on the ticket that was already in review and I scroll down here, you can see that this person has provided the screenshot for things that I was requesting for as the acceptance criteria, and they have added also the information in the comment section. So when I'm reviewing it, those are the things I will look at. And when I've reviewed it, I'm just going to move it to done. To give you credit for the assignment, we have the Excel sheet that we are using to track our work. So this Excel sheet is just used to track your work. So when you complete the first assignment here, we'll mark it as complete. And we have extensive amount of projects we have to complete. And this is just to track your progress. When you see groups in here, the group does not really matter in terms of you completing your assignment. It is a self-paced program. You work on your projects at your own pace. And when you need help with anything, the groups are an additional resources you can rely on. You can also message me, but to get the best response, it's better to just post your question in the DevOps channel, and anyone that gets to it first would answer your question. And if you look in here, you will see those that are pretty active in here. So that is pretty much how the program is set up. Remember, in your account, you'll see all these projects here. Start at the top, work your way down, and when you complete a project, there will be a corresponding assignment for that project. To find the assignment for the project, you have to go in the Slack channel, click on this icon here. You see all the assignments here. You can see assignment 2, which corresponds with project 2, assignment 3, which corresponds with project 3, and so on. I'm working on the next assignment that you guys will be working on, which is going to be Terraform modules for those that have complete assignment 6. So I'm working on the file for that, and that should be ready this week. So that is what I want to mention about how the program is structured and things you need to do to start your journey. These are the things that I did to improve my skills to get my first job as a cloud engineer. And majority of the things that I'm showing you in this project are even what I am doing on a day-to-day as a cloud engineer. On a day-to-day as a cloud engineer, I'm always using Visual Studio Code, creating pull requests, using GitHub, all those things are what I'm showing you here. So I want you guys to take it serious, especially when you get to the assignment. So that's what I want to cover. And literally, what you put in is what you get out of it. And I've always encouraged you guys, try not to take too much break. It is good to just be consistent. Just create a schedule for yourself, whether it is 2 hours every day, Monday to Saturday, and just follow that schedule no matter what. No matter how you feel, follow your schedule. There are days you will feel like, what's the point of it? I do have those days. It feels like you are just doing it, but you are not seeing any results. But I guarantee you, you are making progress. A good way to look at it is if you guys go to the gym, right, and you start working out today, you're not going to see the results when you walk out of the gym today. You will see the results months down the line if you stay consistent. I want you guys to think of your journey towards your cloud goal as the same thing. All the little things you are doing today, it does pay off at the end. Because at the end, when you start applying for a job, you have enough knowledge to be able to speak during your interview. That is the main thing we are trying to achieve. For you to have enough knowledge to be able to work on a day-to-day as a cloud engineer on day one, you know what you are doing. You won't be lost and feel out of place. And also when you work in the interview, you're also confident about speaking about your experience and things you have done. And completing this project and understanding them will allow you to do that. So that's what I want to say. Stay consistent, create a schedule for yourself, and no matter how you feel, stick to that schedule. That is the minimum you can do from your end. And I guarantee you, if you can just stick to just being consistent, you'll see the result at the end. I promise you. Because I always tell you guys, if I can do it, you guys can do it. I also told myself in the beginning that I can't do all these things. There was a time where I started my cloud journey and I stopped because I was running into issues and I just stopped working on it. Almost a year after that, I was still complaining about the same job that I was in, that I was desperate to change. So when I went back the second time, I just told myself, I'm not going to take no for an answer. I'm going to stick to it. And that is what pretty much led to where I am today. So my advice to you guys, stay consistent, and no matter how you feel, do your projects every day. So that is what I want to cover about the projects here. And also, the projects here are meant for you to go through it, make as many mistakes as you can make, test your knowledge. Don't skip the project and jump in straight to the assignment. The assignment are meant for you to test your knowledge on what you learned from each project. So because I noticed some people are skipping the project and just going straight to the assignment, and I'm saying that you are making minor error of basic things you would understand if you would have completed the project. So complete the project first before you start doing the assignment. Okay, so that is what I want to mention about that. Sorry, I'm just reading the comment section. Okay, someone asks, what's the purpose of the group? The group, initially when we created it, is supposed to be people you can rely on, where you guys can work together as you work through your projects, and you can rely on each other. But the issue with the group is, since people are dropping in and out, I don't want anyone to use that as an excuse of why they are not completing their project. That is why I said work independently. But since we created the group in the beginning, it's just still there. But some people are active, some people are not. The best way to get the result you want, if you have a question or if you are looking for someone to troubleshoot with you, is just to post your question in the DevOps channel here. And whoever is available, everyone is pretty helpful. They would try to assist you and help you troubleshoot your work. So, and also, if no one is responding, I also try to get to you as soon as possible to help you troubleshoot any issue you are facing. So the group is not really as effective now because people are dropping in and out. But what is more effective is to post your question in the DevOps channel. Do you guys have any question before I go to the next thing? Okay. So for today's demo last week, someone asked me, how do you import an RDS instance into Terraform if you have already created it in the management console? So what I would say is, in order for you to understand the process of importing the RDS resource you've already created in the management console into Terraform is, first, it is not a substitute for not wanting to learn Terraform. So don't think that for every resources you'll be creating with Terraform that you want to deploy in AWS, you will just create them first in AWS and import them to Terraform. Yes, it does work, but you still have to have a foundational knowledge of how Terraform works. And you will see that when we work on this demo. So whether you learn Terraform first or you learn it this way, I approve both methods, but I still want you guys to understand how to create your resources using Terraform. And remember what we discussed. I can point you guys to the link of that class where we talked about things you need to understand are resource type, reference name, arguments, and attributes. Once you understand those things in Terraform, it'll be easy for you to pretty much create any resource in Terraform. Okay, so to start, we want to create an RDS instance in the management console and see how we can import it into Terraform. You can also use this same process to import any resource you create in the management console into Terraform. To start, the first thing we are going to do is create our RDS in the management console. So before I create my RDS, I'm going to create the security group that I will attach to the RDS instance. In the management console, I'm going to type VPC and I'm going to select VPC under services. And in the VPC dashboard, I'm going to scroll down here and select security groups. I'm using the default VPC for this project, but you can use your custom VPC if you prefer. I'm going to click create security group, give the security group a name. I'll call it DBSG, and I'm going to enter the same name as the description. Then I'm going to create this security group in my default VPC. And for my inbound rule, I'm just going to add a rule for MySQL, which is MySQL Aurora on 3306. And here I'm just going to limit the CIDR block to my VPC. It doesn't really matter what you enter here, but so that I don't open it to the world, I'm just going to limit it to my VPC. So let me get the CIDR block of my VPC here. Okay, this is the CIDR block of my VPC. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to come to this page here and paste it here. So once we limit the traffic to the CIDR block of our VPC, we'll scroll down here and just click create security group. So what I entered on the inbound rule is just opening the port on MySQL, but what I limited it to does not matter for this demo. But if you are working on your project, make sure you are limiting it to the right security group. Typically, it is always the web server security group we will limit it to. So that's the first step. We'll create our security group that we will attach to the RDS instance. Then next, we are going to create a subnet group for the RDS instance. In the search box, type RDS and go to your RDS service. On the RDS dashboard, select subnet groups, then click create subnet group. Give the subnet group a name. I'll call it demo RDS subnet group. Once you give the subnet group a name, copy it and paste it here under description. Then under VPC, this is where you select the VPC you want to create the subnet group in. So remember, guys, subnet group is how we specify the subnets in our VPC that we want to launch our RDS instance in. So that's just what the subnet group does. So here we've entered the name of the subnet group, and under VPC, we have select the VPC we want to launch our RDS instance in. And under availability zone, this is where we select the availability zone in our VPC. So my VPC has 6 availability zones here. I'm going to use 2, which is US East 1A and US East 1. You can select any availability zone you see in your VPC. Once you've selected your availability zones, here you are going to select the subnet in the availability zone. So I'm going to select this subnet in US East 1A and this subnet in US East 1B, and click out and create my subnet group. Subnet group is how we specify the subnets in our VPC that we want to create our RDS instance in. You can see that in my VPC, I had 6 subnets, but I only selected 2. That means that when our RDS instance is being created, those 2 subnets are only going to be available for the RDS instance to be created in. So this is just a good way to limit your RDS instance to specific subnets within your VPC. So once we have created our subnet group, the next thing we are going to do is create our RDS instance. So select databases here and click create database. We are going to select MySQL engine, and under the engine version, it is going to be the latest version here. So we can leave it, let me scroll down. You can select any engine version. I'll just select the latest one, which is 8.0.34. It doesn't really matter for this demo. And under templates, you can use free tier. Someone asked me this week, should you use dev and test or free tier? It doesn't really matter which one you use here. It just means that when you use free tier, that means that you are using one that will cost the least amount of money. And when you also use the free tier, you can see that some options here are grayed out. Versus if I use dev and test, you can see that this option is available. For the projects we are working on, you guys feel free to use the free tier. Definitely don't use production. You can use dev and test, but there's no reason to use dev and test. Just use the free tier. It's fine that these are grayed out. Then scroll down. Under database instance identifier, we are going to give it a name. I'll just call it demo RDS. Then scroll down. Under credentials, we are going to enter the username for our database. So we'll call it, give it any name. I'll call it as this. And under password, I'm going to enter my password. And here I'll confirm the password. Then scroll down. Under instance class, always use the db-t2 micro. That is also the inexpensive one. So don't use any of the other higher one. Always use db-t2 micro. That is sufficient for our project. And scroll down. We will leave all this option as default. Scroll down. Under connectivity, we will leave all this option as default. Here, make sure you select your VPC. I only have the default VPC, and I'll select that. And under subnet group, typically it will find the subnet group in your RDS console, and it would select it here. Just in case if you have multiple subnet groups, then you have to select this drop down and select the right one. Since I only have one subnet group, it has selected for me. And here, scroll down. Under VPC security group, we are going to choose an existing security group, which was the security group I created before I started this demo. Then I'm going to select this drop down. I called it DBSG. I'll select it here, click out. And under availability zone preference, remember we selected 2 availability zones in our database subnet group. And this is just asking you in which of the availability zone do you want to launch the RDS instance. So remember, we can launch our RDS instance in one availability zone and create the standby in the other availability zone. So here, I'm not going to select any availability zone. I'll just let AWS pick one for me and scroll down here. The only other thing we need to change is under additional configuration here, and we need to enter the name for our database. So here I'm just going to enter application DB. Once you enter the name for your database, scroll down here and we'll leave all these other options as default. One thing I want to mention is when you guys see this $14 here, it doesn't mean when you run this RDS instance right now, AWS is going to charge you $14 to use it. I believe this cost is, if you leave it running, this is roughly about how much it will cost you a month if you leave your RDS instance running. I think this is like the monthly charge if you leave it running. But once you do your demo and you delete your RDS instance, it's not going to cost you any money. So what you guys are seeing here, as you can see, it is an estimate monthly cost. It also says it here, and I didn't even see that. It is an estimated monthly cost. It is not what AWS will charge you right now. So scroll down here and create your database. I'll just taking the time to walk you through the database, but in your project, you will learn how to create database. For those that are just watching now and you don't understand how to create database, it doesn't really matter. Once you start working on your project, you will learn all these things. So I've created my RDS instance. I like to just copy my credentials so I don't forget, but sometimes I always forget. So, okay. So this is where we are. You've created an RDS instance in the management console, and now you want to import this RDS instance into Terraform. To start, the first thing we are going to do is go to the Terraform documentation. Open Google and type Terraform AWS create RDS. So I'll just type something like this, something as descriptive as what I'm trying to do. Then I'll press enter. Typically, it is always the first result that takes you to the documentation for the resource you are trying to create. And you can see here, it says AWS DB instance. I know this is it, so I'm going to select it. In this Terraform documentation, I am in the RDS instance documentation. To find the code to import an RDS instance that is already created in AWS into Terraform, all you have to do is scroll down. For any particular resource you are in the documentation, scroll all the way down, or even here on this page, click on import, which will take you to the bottom of that documentation. This is where Terraform has included the code. So you can see here, it says to import an RDS instance that is already created in the management console into Terraform. If you are using, how do I say this? Before, this is what we used to use. We used to do Terraform import, then you will specify your resource type and the reference name, right? But as of Terraform version 1.5, you can now use the import block to import a resource that is already created in the management console into Terraform. And I find this much easier to use. So that is what we are going to use. So the first thing you will see here is that it is saying that you have to have Terraform version 1.5.0. So first thing you do is open your terminal on your computer, whether you are using Windows or Mac. Open your terminal. Since I'm using Windows, I've opened PowerShell, and you are going to check the Terraform version that you have installed. For those that are just joining that you haven't got to Terraform, just watch the video. Don't worry about doing any of this at this stage. When you get to this part during your project, you will understand everything we are doing. So here, I want to check the Terraform version that I have. So I'm just going to type Terraform -- version. And you can see that the Terraform version that is installed on my computer is version 1.6.1. That is sufficient for what the documentation is requiring. Just in case if you don't have the latest Terraform version, let's say your Terraform version is version 1.4 and the documentation is requiring that your version should be at least 1.5. So what you have to do at that point is update your Terraform version. On a Windows computer, to update your Terraform version is very simple. All you have to do is go on Google and type install Terraform. Then select the documentation. I always find that is this second one. Select this second documentation here. Then this is the page you want to be on, install Terraform. Since I am installing Terraform on a Windows computer, I'm going to select Windows here. And this is the binary file I need to download. So here, I'm going to click download. Once I download it, I'll go to that folder. And this is the folder I just downloaded. What you guys can do if you don't want your file to get lost, just create a new folder here, move your zip folder into it, and go into that folder and unzip it. And when you unzip it, it will unzip the file here. So all you have to do is cut this file. You can either copy it or cut it. I'm going to cut this file. Once you cut it, then go to the directory on your computer that you've placed your Terraform folder. Remember when I asked you guys to install Terraform on your computer, I asked you to create a folder and put this Terraform file in that folder. So just go to that directory where you have put that folder. I put mine on the C drive in this Terraform folder. So I'm just going to click it. And here I'm just going to paste the new file that I just downloaded and replace the one that is in there. That is all you have to do to update your Terraform version. So make sure you close your terminal and open it again. If you go back to your terminal and type Terraform -- version again, it should update your version for you. I'm already on the latest version. That's why you are seeing here. But if you are not, it will update it for you. That is how you can update Terraform on a Windows computer. On Mac computer, remember you guys used Homebrew to install Terraform. So I'm pretty sure Homebrew has a command that you can use to update Terraform to the latest version. Let me ask ChatGPT and see. So you can type something like this. I want to use Homebrew to update Terraform on my Mac computer, and just press enter and see what you get. So typically it will most likely give you the command you need to run. So first it's telling you that if you haven't installed Homebrew, you must install Homebrew with this command, right? Then once you have installed Homebrew, then you can run this command to install Terraform. But since you would have already installed Terraform here, to use Homebrew to upgrade Terraform, first you have to run the brew update to update that package on your computer. Then you can run brew upgrade HashiCorp tab Terraform. That would upgrade Terraform for you. Then you can run your Terraform -- version. This is the way you will upgrade your Terraform version on a Mac computer. So that's the first thing we need to do, upgrade our Terraform version, which we have done. Then the next thing we are going to do is start creating our RDS project. So on your computer, I want you to create a folder, and I'm just going to create a folder here, and I'll call the folder demo RDS, right? It doesn't matter what you call the folder, create it in any directory on your computer. For me, I'm creating it on my desktop. So once I've created the folder, the next thing I'm going to do is open the folder in Visual Studio Code. I'm going to open Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to open that folder I just created in Visual Studio Code. So here, select file, open folder, and browse to the location where you created the file. I created it on my desktop, demo RDS folder, select folder to open it. Once you have opened that folder in Visual Studio Code, the next thing you are going to do is create your Terraform file in here. So here, I'm going to right click anywhere in this open space and select new file, give the file a name. I'll call the file rds.tf. Once you've created your rds.tf file, the next thing you are going to do is create your provider block. Remember, the provider block allows us to authenticate with AWS. So here I'm going to type provider. The provider is going to be AWS, and that's all I need to do. You guys already have the provider block in your account. If you want to use a specific profile, remember you have to type profile here, and profile equals to. But if you have a default profile already set on your computer, you don't have to enter anything here. When you run Terraform init, it is just going to use the default profile you have configured on your computer. So I'm going to save this file. Once you have created your provider block, the next thing we are going to do is go back to that RDS documentation. Then let's scroll up here. To create an RDS instance, this is the basic code Terraform is providing to you to use. So what we are going to do is just copy this code, copy it, and we are going to come back to our Terraform project and paste it here. Then I'm going to drop that a little bit. Then remember, before I created my RDS instance, I also created a database subnet group. And in Terraform, there is also a resource type for that. So let me look for that resource type. It is, so I type Terraform AWS create database subnet group. Typically, it is always the first result. You can see it here, AWS DB subnet group. Select it. And here, we are just going to copy the example they gave us, which is here. Copy it and come back to your code, paste it here. So these are the two things you need to do. Remember, the resource we are trying to import from our management console into Terraform is our database subnet group we created and the RDS instance we created. So that is why we have added these two sample codes here. Then the next thing you are going to do is in the Terraform documentation here, let's go to the one for RDS. In the Terraform documentation, if you go back to the import, it is saying to import the resource. All you have to do is use the import block, right? So we are going to copy this block and go back to our Terraform code. Once you copy the import block, paste it here. Then what this import block means is that we want to import a resource ID, right? This is the ID of the resource into Terraform. And so what that means is, for example, for this first import block, if you want to make it clear, you can put an import block here. Then you can copy it and do the same thing over here. The same process works for any type of resource you are trying to import, right? So first we want to import this, and next we want to import this. So that is why we have two import blocks. This import works for this, and this import works for this. So first, let's start with the database subnet group. What this means is we want to import to this resource. So whatever your resource is here, that is what you enter here. So I like to rename my resource reference name from default or whatever Terraform is calling it to my own name. So for example, I'm going to change mine to DB subnet group, right? So once I change it here, so that means that I want to import this resource to my resource type and my reference name. So just copy your resource type and your reference name, paste it here, then remove the quotes, add a period, and here and here. So that's what this means. Remember, you are importing a resource to whatever your resource type and reference name is. Then the next argument is the ID, which is the name of the resource in the management console you want to import. So if I go to my management console, I'm going to close all this, my management console, and I'll go to subnet groups. You can see I'll select this. This is the name of my subnet group. If I also go back, you can see on that name, this is the name of my subnet group. This is also called the ID. So copy it, then come back to your Terraform code. I will paste that here. So make sure you paste it in the double quotes. And that's what we are going to do here. So we are going to do the same thing for our RDS instance. Remember, I want to import to a resource. The two is the resource you've specified on your Terraform code. And again, I'm going to rename this to DB instance instead of default. That means that I want to import it to my resource type and my reference name. So I'll copy this, paste it here, remove the quotes, add a period, then here, remove the quotes and remove the quotes. Then the ID is the name of the resource in your management console. So we'll go to the management console, go to the database, and this is the name. It is the DB identifier. So copy the name here and come back to your Terraform code and paste it here. So once you've done that, save your work. We'll select file and click save. So one thing I want to mention here is that remember when we created these resources in the management console, we specified some settings for the resource, but the settings we have specified for the resource are not the same one we are putting here, right? Because we just copied this from the Terraform documentation. So when you are importing your resource this way, you still have to enter, how do I say this? You have to enter the same settings you picked in the management console here. I'll show you two ways we can do that. First, I'll show you what's going to happen when we use this setting we just picked from the Terraform documentation. But before I do that, I'm going to update this subnet ID because we don't have any resource type here. So this is not going to work. So for the subnet ID here, I'm going to use the ID of the subnet in the management console. So here in the management console, come to your subnet groups, select it. You can see the subnet IDs you are using for the subnet group. So I'm going to copy them, copy this one and replace it here. Then I'm also going to replace this one. So I'll copy this one and replace it here. So that is all I need to do now, right? For the tags, since I didn't enter a tag for this, you can see I don't have a tag. It is fine, but I don't have a tag for it. It's fine. There are two things I want to show you. Let's say you just copied the resource type and the arguments from the sample code from the Terraform documentation into your code. The only thing I had to change here is the resource type and reference name that it was using there because I don't have those resources here, so it will fail. But this is the subnet that I've launched my database subnet group in. That is why they are showing here. So the first option is once you have entered this is all you need to do. Save your file, then open your terminal. I'm going to right click on the RDS instance and select open in integrated terminal. Then here, I'm going to just drag this up so you guys can see it. First, I'm going to initialize. I'll type Terraform init. It is initializing. I'll give it some time So once you have initialized, the next command I'm going to type is Terraform plan. During this Terraform plan is when it's going to import your RDS instance and the database subnet group that is in the management console into your Terraform state. So once you type Terraform plan, press enter. You can see it has now import the state of the database subnet group from what is in the management console into the Terraform state. But watch what is happening here. First, here it is telling you the plan is to import. So it means it is going to import 2 resources. That is good. Then it is saying it's going to destroy 2 and add 2. So that means that it is going to destroy the RDS instance. We have, let me drag this down a little bit so you can see. It is going to destroy the RDS instance we have in the management console and the database subnet group, and it is going to replace it, right? The reason why it is doing that is because in our Terraform code here, we are specifying arguments for our database subnet group and the RDS instance that is different from what we have in the management console. That is why it is deleting it and creating it. So it is deleting the ones we have in the management console and just creating a new one to meet the arguments we have specified here. So let's say you've already picked the proper settings in the management console and you don't want to delete it, right? This is where the tedious works comes in, right? You have to look in here and copy the arguments. So for some of these, you can see the arguments that would change, like some of this that has the yellow, what it is in the management console and what it is changing it to. For example, this copy tags to snapshot. In the management console, it is set to true, but now in your new Terraform code that you have here, it is set to false. The cheat way of doing this is you can copy all these arguments from here, paste them here, then sort through them, right? That is the best way you can do it. But I will show you just a quick way of doing it, which is why I said you need to have prior knowledge in picking your arguments for your resources. Because if you understand that, you can easily modify your arguments here so that Terraform is not going to force the replacement of the RDS instance. So let's do that. Let's start with the database subnet group. We know the name of our database subnet group is, we call it demo RDS subnet group. So I'm going to copy the name here and I'm going to paste it here. The tag doesn't really matter because when you are adding a tag to resource, it is not going to force a replacement of that resource, but I'm just going to add the tag as the same name. So that is it. I'm going to save my file, right? Now watch when I run Terraform plan again. So now you can see the plan is 2 to import, 1 to add, 1 to change, right? So if I scroll up here, you can see that it is still going to replace my RDS instance, right? That is saying it will be replaced, but it is not going to replace my database subnet group. So you can see my database subnet group, it is going to force an in place update. And that is because I added the description, right? And I added the tags. So really, it's not really even the description, it's the tags. You can see here where you see the 2+, that is where I add the tag. If I remove that tag, it will not update anything because my argument will be up to date with whatever I already have in the management console. So that is how that works. Then the same thing we did for this subnet group, we have to do it for the RDS instance. So I'm going to close this for now. And the best way to do this is I have some arguments that we are using in our project. I'm just going to paste those arguments here. Like I said, remember what I said is this is the tedious part. You have to pick the argument that you are using so that your resource match what you have in the management console. So here, I'll just paste the arguments that I created here. These are the same arguments we are using for our project, and we can just go through it. So for the first argument is engine. The engine I picked is MySQL. If we go to our RDS instance, right, the engine is MySQL, right? So that's why I'm using MySQL there. If you also go out, you can see it here. It's MySQL, right? Then the next argument is engine version. The engine version is 8.034, right? That is what I've entered here. Then the next one is multi-AZ. We can set multi-AZ to false. When we run our plan, we will see how that goes. Then the next one is instance identifier. So if you go to the management console, the instance identifier is demo RDS, and that is what I've entered here. The username for my RDS, I called it as this. And again, if you come to your RDS instance and configuration here, username, I called it as this. Then the password, this is what I called my password. Then my database name is application DB. That is what I have here. Then the instance class, remember I selected T2 micro. Let me see where we can see that information. We have to probably come here. Let me come to database. You can see here, the size is dbt2 micro. That is what I have here. Then the allocated storage I picked is 20. And this is the argument for the database subnet group. Remember, the database subnet group is the subnet group you want to create the database in. And since we are creating our subnet group here, we have to copy our resource type and reference name. So copy this and paste it here. Then remove the quotes at the period. So that should work. Then the VPC security group ID, this is the ID of the security group we attach to the RDS instance. So you'll come here to your RDS instance, and this is the security group you attach to it, select it, and this is the ID of the security group, select it and copy it. Once you copy it, come here and replace this, and skip final snapshot, we'll leave this at true, and publicly accessible, we'll set it to false. So these are the main things you have to change for your RDS instance that would not force the replacement of the RDS instance. As long as what I would say are the main things are these ones. As long as these ones match what you have in the management console, it is not going to force the replacement of the RDS instance. So let's run our plan again and see what we get. So once you change majority of it, I will advise you change some argument one at a time. Run the plan, see what you get, and keep changing it. So once we've changed it, here I'm going to open the integrated terminal again, and I'm going to run Terraform plan. And now you can see it says plan 2 to import, 0 to add, and 2 to change. So now instead of replacing my RDS instance, it is just changing some values in it that I probably haven't specified in my argument. You can see here for the arguments, copy tags to snapshots. Currently in the management console is set to true, and it is going to change it to false because on my code, because I don't have that argument there, by default, Terraform probably specify it to false. So let's say for this one, you want it to be whatever it is in the management console, which is true. You can just copy this argument here, copy this, and just paste it here for your RDS instance resource, paste it there. And don't forget to remove this here. So if you scroll down here, apply immediately, it is going to add that because we don't have that in our code. If you want to add it, this doesn't hurt anything. If you don't add, whether you add it or not, it won't hurt anything. But let's say apply immediately is currently set to false and you want to set it to true. You can copy this, paste it here, and then you can set the value to whatever you want to set it to. So if I want to set it to true, I can set it to true. Then let's scroll down here. Another thing is currently in the management console, max allocated storage is set to 1000, and here it is going to set it to null, right? So if you want to leave it the same way it is in the management console, you can copy this because the red means it is going to remove it. So you can copy this and paste it here. This is how you will sort through your argument when you are using Terraform to import a resource you already have in the management console. And I believe that is all. So here, we can save our work. And now I'm going to run Terraform plan again. So after you run Terraform plan, you can see the same thing. The plan is 2 to import, 2 to change. The main thing is it won't destroy the RDS instance we already have in the management console, which is what we want. So once you see that your plan is not going to delete your RDS instance, you can now run Terraform apply. So once you run Terraform apply, type yes. It is now importing the resource you have in the management console into your Terraform state, and we'll give it some time to finish importing it. And now you'll see that after this is done, the resource that I created in the management console, I can now delete it with Terraform and recreate that resource with Terraform. So I'll give it some time to finish creating it. In the meantime, does anyone have any question?
Yes, Aziz. This is Rodney.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Why not just instead of importing all the block, we just take the block with that argument, and then when we place that, we just run Terraform import with the ID of the RDS and the name that we want to give to the RDS. And then when we have it, we just run Terraform show to copy all the argument that it provides, put in our empty block, and then run Terraform plan to clean all those resources that are not necessary.
Yeah, you can do it that way too. Either way, whether you do it that way or this way, you are still going to have to sort through your argument.
Just to
Right.
have a little bit shortcut.
Yeah, but yeah, so that one, the documentation is here. So you can see in this documentation, this is actually the latest one Terraform is recommended. So that's why I did the demo on this one. The one you are talking about is this one, which is the old way we used to do it. Well, I won't necessarily call it the old way, but yeah, but this was how we previously did it, right? It's here. Then the new one, which is running on Terraform version 1.5, is this one. So if you prefer that way of doing it, you can always use that way.
Yeah, I prefer to ask all my questions at the same time because I'm at work. Please,
Okay,
I
sure.
want to go back a little bit. It is about Terraform again. When we were deploying in different environments, and one question was coming out. You say normally what company practice is to have two AWS accounts, two different. And then how if we just use two regions? So we have dev in one region and prod in another region. And then we try to manage everything in the same account. We as demo, the demo that we are doing, what we are doing is considered as demo. If we do this, is it acceptable? I know the problem will be when it comes to use the DNS. How to have different DNS now that will help to have the POC and the dev as our output. Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah. So what you are suggesting, it also works. If you just want to create your dev in one region and prod in one region, as opposed to creating a separate account, that will work too. You can use the same method and test. But also remember there is a limitation to that as well, because there might be some resources you are using that spans across regions. Then how do you account for those resources? So it is just best, and at work, in all the projects that I've worked on, I haven't seen anyone using multiple regions. What if you have an application requirement that requires those applications to exist in another region for disaster recovery? You understand?
Okay.
So that is the reason why we use multiple accounts instead of using one single AWS account for all of our environment. It's best to just use multiple accounts.
Okay. If we consider that it works, how can we use the same DNS, how can I say it, the same domain name to give the output of the port and the web?
I think you just have to create different records for your subdomain name. Either you register another domain name, but I'm sure there is a way you can create another record of your subdomain name. Then you can point that record to one environment and point another record to another environment. There's a way you can do it with your DNS. So either you can have two separate domain name, or you can use one domain name and point the subdomain name to different things. But there will be an additional configuration you have to do. I'll have to look at it to see how it is done, but there will be an additional configuration you would have to do to point to the different region you want to point to. Is there a specific way why you are trying to do it that way?
No, I'm just curious.
Okay.
It's just that I just try to guess how doing things.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That is actually is good. Those are good questions, and those are good things to test out. I'll look into it, how you can create, but I know you would do it through your subdomain name if you want to use the same domain name. You know how, let's say my main domain name is aziz.com. Then for my subdomain name, I can have aziz.aosnote.com. So that is one subdomain name. It is similar to when you guys see this on, let's try AWS and see. You see how Amazon.com, is like their real domain name, but then they have a subdomain name here for AWS. So you can do the same thing, but this is still pointing to Amazon.com. But here they created a subdomain name for it. So I believe you can do the same thing.
Yeah.
But it's not something
the thing that make me, I was saying the thing that makes me think is that when we have the same account, we have the same S3 bucket. We don't have to have another account somewhere. If it is in two regions in the same account, they will share the same S3. It is a little bit why I was thinking that.
But you know that defeats the purpose of having multiple environments, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what if something happens to that account and that S3 bucket in that account? So now you've lost all your data for all your application to all together. So sharing the same S3 bucket for multiple environments actually defeats the purpose, or trying to share the same resource. The point of having multiple environment is so that, well, one, you are properly able to test in one environment, and if it works, you are able to push that change up to the next environment. And also, it could also be used for disaster recovery. When the environment are isolated, if something happened in one account, it is not affecting the next account. So, I mean, it is not wrong. It is all depending on how the project is structured and how a company wants to set their requirements. But I would say for best practice, and if you are trying to learn and just get the best knowledge out of it, it is better to have multiple accounts for your different environments.
Thank you, sir.
No problem. Okay. So once your resource has been imported, the next thing you can do is remove this import block. So I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to remove this. Then I'm going to save my work. Then again, if I run Terraform plan, that is just Visual Studio Code. It always does that. So I'm going to run Terraform plan. You can see that there is no change and my infrastructure is up to date. So now if I run Terraform destroy, you can see now I can delete the resource I created in the management console. I'm not going to delete it yet. I'm going to type no. I want to try something out that you suggested. So I'm going to clear my screen and I'm going to type Terraform show. So you see that when you type Terraform show, right, it is still going to give you all the arguments, right? This is what I meant. I've used this method before. It is still going to give you all the arguments, right? And if you copy all these arguments under your resource block, right, you still have to sort through them and remove the ones that are not applicable. Because, for example, the address, you definitely won't use that because that is going to be the endpoint of the RDS instance. And this is determined after the RDS instance is created.
Yes, sir. Just that the step that we
go ahead.
Just that everything that we were doing before, we don't need it if we use that second method.
What you were saying that everything we're doing before we don't need it. I don't understand. So there's just multiple.
That means when we were, please, sir, can you say again?
So there are two methods that Terraform is recommending. So this is, you can use the import and you can also use this command. Whichever way you are using, you are pretty much doing the same thing. For this one, you would have to create an empty resource block, right? Point this to the resource you have in the management console, which is equivalent to what we did in the import. Then we sort through our argument. It is the same thing you are doing with this one. To you, it might be faster for you to get through this, but I'm saying once you run your Terraform import on your empty resource block and you run Terraform show to show you all this, you still have to sort through this to pick what you need because all these arguments is not going to work when you add them here. So which is the same thing that I did here where we were sorting through the arguments that we need. They still kind of work the same way. So
hello, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to be clear on this Terraform imports. So basically in the argument, there are some certain arguments that are priority that could make the Terraform import work perfectly in terms of like not destroying what you already have before.
Exactly.
Like it just, okay. So because I see that we have a lot of arguments, but so we have to sort out some of them. So how do we identify these particular ones itself, or we just have to be running Terraform plan to see, okay, if it's destroying or it's not destroying?
Exactly. So that was why I said in the beginning that using Terraform import is not a substitute for not wanting to learn Terraform. If you have the foundational knowledge of, okay, when I'm creating my RDS instance, these are the typical arguments that I need, then it will make the process of sorting through all these arguments much easier. So the best way you can sort through it, let's say worst case scenario, you don't know what arguments to pick. You can do what you said, where you can add the arguments, remove which ones you feel are not necessary, run your plan, see what you get, and keep adjusting it as you go. Or you can try to create your RDS instance again and see whatever settings you are picking here and look for those arguments. So what I'm pretty much trying to say is whether you use the, and I'm sorry, I don't know who I was speaking to because when I'm sharing screen, I can't see everyone's name. So whatever method you choose to use, whether you use the method the gentleman recommended, which is this one, he's not wrong. He's also right that you can do it this way. Whether you use this method or this method to import your resource, you still have to understand the process of adding your arguments. That Terraform does not make it easy to just import it and all the arguments you are using is just going to be there. They are still going to give you all the arguments that exist for RDS instance, and you will have to sort through it. So yes, to answer your question, you are right. You can either go through the trial and error where you just remove whichever one you need, or if you know it beforehand, like I did, I just add them here and I updated my values.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yes, because when you run this Terraform show, it is going to show you all the arguments. This will not work. It will complain about it. This will not work. This will not work. No, that will work. A lot of this will not work. Some of this will not work, but majority of it will work. So because some of these are determined after the RDS instance is created. So yeah, that is how it works. To show, I'm going to close my terminal and open it again because I'm going to open integrated terminal. To use Terraform to delete the resource that I created in the management console, I'm going to type Terraform destroy, type yes, and it is now deleting the RDS instance that I created in the management console. These are the methods you can use to import the resource you created in the management console into your Terraform state. Remember, the two methods you can use, this import block is what the newest one Terraform is recommending, which you can see to use this, you have to be on almost the latest version of Terraform, which is the version that is either 1.5 or higher. And if you prefer to use this method, like I said, there are many ways to do things in the cloud. If whatever way works for you, if you feel this way works for you, use this. And if you feel this is easy for you, use this. Yes, go ahead, Amit.
So, sorry, I haven't really gotten to Terraform yet. So I'm just curious to ask. So assuming a startup have their resources on AWS, right? The management, and they're not started the automation yet. So are you saying we can import all the resources they have?
Yes, yes, you can.
Okay.
It will be a tedious process, for if they are using as many resources, you can import all of them, but it will still be a tedious process because right here we only demoed 2. What if they have like 50 resources that they were using? Like you have to go through the same process. Obviously, it will be something you would do over time, but yes, if they have an infrastructure, you can. As long as if Terraform has the command to import that resource, you can import it.
Okay. So would that be classified as migration?
And someone can help me out. I'll say yes, but it is a form of migrating your infrastructure into Terraform code, but it would not migrate the application itself, but you are just migrating your AWS resources. Yeah, it's a form of migration, right? But let's say it is an EC2 instance resource that I want to migrate, right? Or let's use this EC2, then we will use RDS. But let's say it's an EC2 instance I want to import into Terraform, and I've used all this code and I've imported the EC2 instance. Understand that it would not import the code you have running on that EC2 instance, right? So if you were to run Terraform destroy, it would delete it. But as long as you don't run Terraform destroy and you are able to keep the exact state of that EC2 instance, that it is only able to check it and say that, okay, this match what is in your state, then it is fine. Does that make sense?
Okay, so
it's just importing whatever infrastructure you have into Terraform state. I wouldn't go as far as calling it migration, but I see what you are saying. It is a form of migrating your resource into Terraform. But in terms of when I think of migration, I'm always thinking about the application that your company are hosting. So it doesn't migrate your application for you, just the resource that your application is running on, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, so side question. So let's assume our EC2 instance is hosting a static or dynamic website. and I decided to import that EC2 instance to Terraform.
Mm-hmm.
So when I do like Terraform apply, my website will be running with the whole, the configured EC2.
Yeah, it will still be running as long as when you run Terraform apply, you saw when I got to the point when I added all my argument, my state was up to date and I didn't have to delete the RDS instance. As long as whatever EC2 instance is already in the management console, when you run your Terraform plan and apply, it is not deleting it, then whatever application you are hosting on it will still be there.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, if you have time, please help me show. I was working on my the EIEC EC2 Instant Endpoint Connect some time ago, but I couldn't find the logo and I couldn't find ECS Fargate. So for some time I just skipped it. Now that I still let me come back to it, I still couldn't find it. So I was hoping you just show me how I can locate it.
Okay, sure. So I believe here if you type ENI, is it ENI? How did I find it? It is, let's try endpoint. There you go. It's on that endpoint. It's right here. Is this what you mean? I mean, maybe you're talking on mute.
Sorry, yeah, I was talking on mute. Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
The Fargate, please. ECS Fargate.
Fargate, okay. Right here.
Oh, all right. Thank you.
You're welcome. So you can use either that one or this one. Any of this will work.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right. That is pretty much it for today's demo. Do you guys have any other questions?
Yeah, Aziz, I have one question, just a quick one.
Sure.
So regarding the CI/CD project with GitHub Actions, just to get more context about the runner. So we have the GitHub runner, we have the self-hosted runner as well. We're using. So I recall there was when we created the self-hosted runner, the main purpose is for us to be able to build the Docker images and also push our SQL script to our RDS database. And aside pushing the scripts to the database, does the GitHub Action also have like a Docker engine feature that we can build the image on GitHub runner itself without the self-hosted runner? Imagine that we are not using the RDS database, that we just want to build the image like on GitHub Action with GitHub Action.
Yes, yes, it does. Yes, it does.
So
go ahead.
So the main idea is just because I was just thinking. So the main idea or the principal idea of us having the self-hosted runner is due to the migration we need to do to the database itself. Aside that, okay, like the secondary one is just because we wanted to build the image as well, take advantage of using the EC2 instance to build the image.
Exactly. On that job, we could have used the GitHub self-hosted runner. I mean, the GitHub runner itself to build our Docker image and push it to ECR. Since we already created our own self-hosted runner, and I think when I was also working about it, I was also thinking about some security things since it is already in our network. So it's just better to use it to build our own Docker image and push it there. But specifically, the reason why we need it is when you have, so let's say this is our network architecture, right? And GitHub is right here. It's outside of our AWS network. So if we use their own runner, right, their runner does not have a way to have access to our RDS instance to migrate the data for us. As you guys know, everything in AWS is denied by default. So to solve that issue, remember what I'm always telling you guys, as a cloud engineer, you're always creating different solutions to solve different issues. There are always different ways to do the same thing. So to solve this issue, what I did is create an EC2 instance here and installed my own self-hosted runner on it. Then once that EC2 instance is in your private network now, and as long as you've set the security group correctly, now it can have access to any resource in your private subnet. Like it doesn't matter any resource you have here, it will have access to it. As opposed to if we use the runner used by GitHub, this would not have access. So that was why, that was the main purpose of us using our own self-hosted runner.
Okay, and okay, that's clear. Then the second one is when we finished with the self-hosted runner, I remember we had to terminate the self-hosted runner itself, so that when we run the pipeline again, we should not run into the issue of Flyway being already installed.
Correct.
So is there a way we could, so there's no way, like in the sense of automating the whole process, we not doing anything, right? Is there a way we can actually check inside the EC2 instance itself and say, okay, is Flyway already installed? Just like we normally set the conditions. And if it responds, yeah, with the version, we can skip that job, then probably go to the next job, which is the ECS Fargate. Because, I was thinking probably if there's something like that we could do, it helps us eliminate. I don't know. That's why I'm just asking.
You can do that in your script. There's pretty much, you can do just about anything you want in your script. But remember the job of our EC2 instance, even beyond that, that is a good point. That is one of the reasons why we terminated it, because once Flyway is installed, right, once Flyway is installed, we don't want to run into the issue of because Flyway is installed and our job will fail. That is one reason. But the other reason is once, let's say you migrate your data, because that's literally what we are using it for. You know, when you start your self-hosted runner, it creates an EC2 instance in your management console.
Yeah.
So why would you want to have that EC2 instance running?
Because we want to have connection to the database. We want to migrate our data to the database.
So you are saying that, well, at work, maybe they will have an EC2 instance running there forever, where they would just want to use that to migrate their data anytime they want. But I'm always leaning more towards saving costs. So here we are trying to save costs, that once we have migrated our data with that self-hosted runner, we just remove it. We don't have to keep it running. And the next time we need to migrate our data again, you can create another GitHub Action job that does that.
I understand, sir. The point I'm actually trying to say is the aspect of the Flyway. Because on the first part we had to delete the EC2 instance from the console itself. Then we now later remove the GitHub self-hosted runner with our deploy our YAML file. Exactly. So and in the next step we had to recreate it again, so that we don't run into the issue of, okay, when it gets to the particular job of migrating the data, it has to download the Flyway again into the EC2 instance. That's the whole idea. We had to delete it so that we don't run into that.
I see. Yeah, we can certainly update our script to look for the Flyway directory in the EC2 instance, and when it finds it, we can skip the process of installing Flyway and just go straight to our migrate. We can do that. I just didn't do that in that project when I was working on it, but certainly we can do that. But we just have possible. Yes, of course it is possible. So it is. So again, that is a good question, and that is a good idea and suggestion. So whatever script I've provided and the things we have done, and this is how it is going to be at work too. When 90% of the time, or to 95% of the time, when you go to your company, when you start working, the application would be already deployed, and you are just stepping in and managing it. And they might have other projects that you'll be working on. It could be new project, it could be existing project, but most of the time the application will already be destroyed. Will already be deployed, right? What you are doing now is exactly what they will expect you to do at work. You can definitely bring up a suggestion that, okay, we are doing it this way. There is a way to improve it. We can improve it by updating this script to check for the Flyway file and skip this job at this point. So certainly what you are doing is definitely recommended. Meaning that my main goal is to enlighten you guys and teach you guys how stuff works. But if you certainly see a way where something can be improved, I definitely expect you to improve it. That shows that you are learning. So yes, to answer your question, yes, you can update that script if you want. And I'll also look into it in my spare time and see how I will update it. Then maybe when I make future updates to the course, I'll just add it to it.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
No problem. Thank you.
Quick question, Aziz.
Yes.
Do you have any plans for Kubernetes project anytime soon?
Yes, I am. I'm working on it, so it's taking me some time to get to it, but I will definitely release it this year for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Does anyone else have any question? Okay. Well, we're almost at time. Thank you, guys. Remember, keep working on your assignment, your project. And once you have completed your project, the assignments are meant to test your knowledge. The only way to get through it and the only way to get to your goal is to persevere. You just have to do it. There's no way around it. You just have to do it. So if your schedule is busy, whatever is going on, you just have to find time to do it. So That's what I would say. Thank you, guys. And
Sorry, I would like a minute with you once the official recording has ended. Just a quick question.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Thank you, guys. Have a good weekend, and I'll see you throughout the week and next week.